on the recording. And Dave, anytime you're ready.
Very good. Welcome, everyone. This is our CPR study session, Volume 2. Thank you all for joining today. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Dave Anderson. I've been a certified Parks and Recreation professional for about 13 years. I got my certification and took this test in 2007. It's involved, it's long, it can be a little tricky, but with proper preparation, you guys should pass without any troubles. We went over the process of how to apply and how to become certified and be able to take the test, to be qualified to take the test. That's on the first study guide that I will send to you if you don't have it. So I won't really go over that today because we've got quite a bit of information today. Once again, the way it will work, I'll go through. We have two sections of the test that we're going to go over today. And then there's a little practice test after each of those sections. And then we have the all-encompassing practice test that we'll go over together at the end. So if you don't mind, please put your microphones on mute until we get to the practice tests. And then you can take your microphone off mute and go ahead and we'll answer together on each of the questions. Okay? So the study guide on that first page that you see here, that's the website, and that's the link that you'd need to get this official study guide if you wanted to get that as well. I've tried to condense it into these two PowerPoints to where all of the pertinent information is in each of these two PowerPoint presentations, but there is still more information in the study guide that you might find useful. So if you want to use that, you still can, but I'll make sure everyone has both of these PowerPoint presentations at the end of the presentation. So again, we did this on the first one, but we're going to go again on the first PowerPoint, but we're going to go over it real quickly again. When you take your CPRP exam, these four pointers are very important when you're tackling each question. Number one is to read the question carefully. I went through the practice test today and got a question wrong because I did not read it carefully. You have to read every single word because there's a true or false, or it's one of these do not apply, or you just have to make sure that you've got all of the information in that question. And when you do that, you can look for the context clues in your question. And almost every question on this test will have some sort of context clue, which will help you determine what the right answer is. And at a minimum for each question, you'll be able to eliminate some obvious incorrect answers in your four choices. So almost every single question, you can narrow down your answer to probably a 50-50 chance, which is really what you're wanting to do. You should have most of the questions correct, but the ones that you're not 100% sure on, if you can narrow it down to a 50-50 chance, that just increases your chances of success. Also, there is no penalty for guessing if you really don't know. So do not leave any question unanswered. Okay, you don't get penalized if you're wrong, so you may as well guess. So make sure that you've at least answered every single question on the exam. Okay, so we're going to start with an example question and go through the four pointers in that process of reading your question and coming up with the right answer. Okay, so first, your example question is: the responsibility for the development of a checklist for assuring uniformity and thoroughness of facility opening and closing procedures typically lies with the agency director, first line facility supervisor, park security officer, or superintendent of parks. So when you're looking through that question, the thing that I see as a context clue is your facility opening and closing procedures. So when you're looking at a specific facility, you're not going to have the agency director, you're not going to have the superintendent of parks. So you can take care of both of those, all right? And then it is a checklist for the facility and opening and closing procedures. Your park security officer probably is not going to be opening and closing your facility. So the correct answer is going to be your first line facility supervisor. Okay. And that's basically a quick synopsis of how you're going to go through each question and how you can eliminate obvious incorrect answers and come up with the correct solution. Okay. So what we have today, we have two remaining sections of our 5 sections in the CPRP exam. We went through programming, finances, and communication in the first PowerPoint. Today we're going to go through human resources and we're going to go through operations. The reason why I split that up that way is human resources and operations are our most extensive categories. So we've got quite a few pointers to go over. When we're going through these PowerPoint slides, the blue terms, okay, are going to be fairly important terms that you'll need to remember. A lot of times it's going to be something that will more than likely be on the test. So just pay a little bit special attention to the blue terms when we're going through these tasks. So the first task in human resources is to develop job descriptions. Your first pointer is going to be job analysis. And in your job analysis, who is in the process of developing that job analysis? Generally, that's your human resource officer, your agency director, and possibly your city manager, just depending on the level of the job that you're creating. So you're going to, who is in the process? Those are the people that will be in the process. You're going to review existing documentation of your job descriptions and any data collection that you have from when you first had that position filled until this new job analysis to where you're going to be filling a new position. So your job analysis is going to include your critical incident and observation, which is a list of the employee behaviors previously over an extended period of time. What did the previous person do in that job? Then you're going to have an interview and you're going to collect perspective of tasks and responsibilities associated with the job from your previous employees or from other employees in your department on that job that you're getting ready to list. Your job performance is your hands-on approach, performing the actual job being examined. So you're going to look at previous job performances on how that job was accomplished. You could go with a structured questionnaire, which is to survey other staff and supervisors about the different responsibilities of the job. A task analysis inventory is your most common process in creating a job analysis. It's basically the list of what that person did for his or her job. Okay, and then you can also, of course, do a combination of the methods. All right. Once you've gone with your job description, you will move to from your job analysis, you move to the job description. You will create your job description from your job analysis. So your job description will include what the job is, the title of the job that you're doing. It's a group of positions that are identical with respect to their tasks. So an actual job can be more than one position. So for example, I've got programmers. You can have more than one programmers with the same job description, and that's where the job is. The position is the specific set of domains and tasks performed by an individual. So the job is a group of positions, so you can have maintenance workers or programmers or whatnot. Your position is the specific set of domains and tasks performed by the individual. Okay, your domain is your primary area of responsibility for that job. So what do you actually do in that specific job and that specific position? And then your tasks are the specific work activities that you do in that domain. So if it was a programmer, for instance, your specific tasks would be creating a program for after-school kids, creating a program for adults, creating a program for older adults. That would be your specific tasks. Your job description format is going to be the job title, the job identification, a brief summary of what the job entails, a specific list generally of your domain and tasks, your job specifications, and any disclaimers that you might have that you're not going to discriminate or you're going to adhere to ADA standards. Those are your disclaimers. Okay. So next, B is to recruit candidates for seasonal, part-time, and contract employment. So the first one, your job analysis, most of the time is going to deal with your full-time staff. This is recruiting for seasonal and part-time and contract. The first step is to develop a recruitment plan for these part-time and seasonal employees. So you need to have a recruitment philosophy. Okay, that'll be agency-wide, explaining what your philosophy is on how you're going to recruit for your positions. You're going to have specific goals and objectives to accomplish when you're recruiting. Okay, specific policies and procedures that you'll need to follow when you're recruiting for these employees. And then the staff needs that you already have, your existing staff needs that you're going to have to display for your recruiting process. Okay, once you've developed that plan, you have to determine what size of your applicant pool you're going to need. It has to be an effective and efficient procedure when you're establishing that pool of qualified applicants. A lot of times they have those online job applicant things, and you end up with 400 applicants and 398 of them are not applicable. Okay, so make sure that the size of the applicant pool coincides with what your job actually is. So you want to have the most qualified people apply for your jobs. You want to have a realistic job preview. A realistic job preview will inform your applicants about all the aspects of the job. So it's not just a rose-colored glasses. This job will be amazing. This is wonderful. You're never going to have to do anything difficult. It's amazing. It's all the different aspects of your job, good and bad. That's your realistic job preview. And then your sources of recruitment would be advertising, unsolicited applications and resumes. That's if someone just turns in a standard resume to City Hall or to the Human Resources. Your professional organizations and associations is TRPA, for example, listing your job opportunities. And then employee referrals would be employees saying, hey, this person would be great for this job. Okay. After that, you're going to review your candidates' applications for seasonal and part-time employment. When you review the applications, you need to first complete your screening application form. So you're going to screen all the forms. You'll throw out any of the applications that are obvious non-starters that would not qualify for the position. Once you've narrowed down this your screening, narrowed down your applications from your screening, you'll move to preliminary interviews. Once you've done that, you'll go to testing. So if there's any tests or if there's any specific qualifications that you'll need to test the applicants for, that's what that would be for. Once you've narrowed down your applicant pool, you'll go to reference checking. Okay, that's a further along process. You don't want to check every applicant's reference if you know you're not going to hire them. Okay. Next up, select and recommend candidates for seasonal, part-time, and contract. So once you've completed your screening, then you will go to rejection of the people that you're not going to hire. Depending on the job that you're putting out there, you will sometimes do a rejection letter, a rejection phone call, or an in-person consultation. Usually those are more for full-time positions. Generally part-time positions, you're only going to call the people that you're wanting to hire. You're not generally going to do a rejection for part-time staff. Okay. When you're selecting your candidate, there is an on-the-spot offer. That doesn't happen very often, but if somebody just completely blows you away and they're way ahead of everyone else in your recruiting and in your application process, you may do an on-the-spot offer, which would be making an offer immediately following the interview. Okay. A delayed offer is what most people will do. You'll go through the application process. You'll go through the interview process. They'll say, we'll get back to you in a week or 2 weeks, and then they'll give you the hiring decision. Okay. And then discrimination, you have to avoid, obviously, during any hiring process, even whether it's intentional or unintentional. Okay. So you have to make sure you construct your interview questions, your application process to where you're not going to be discriminating against any group. E is we're going to move in now to the interview process. When you're interviewing candidates for seasonal part-time and contract employment, the interview process should include reviewing with the candidate the job description so that they have a full understanding of what they are applying for. You have to determine who the people are going to be that interview your candidate. So depending on the position, those are the people that are going to be in the interview process. Here in Pigeon Forge, we usually have, for part-time staff, we'll have our human resource director, our programmers. If it's a programming position, like a counselor position, you'd have our programmers, and then me, the superintendent. If it was for the lifeguards, you'd have your community center manager, the human resource director, and the aquatics director. It just depends on the position as to who the interviews are. After that, you're going to look for what interview format you want, depending on your position. Your interview format can be a formal interview, an informal interview. You can have test questions. It just depends on what the position is, and that's how you're going to select your interview format. So then you're going to develop your interview questions. So you have structured interview questions and unstructured interview questions. Okay, your structured interview questions are about the competency in the position, your situational scenarios that might happen, like if a person is drowning, how would you react? If a parent is complaining, how would you react? Biographical is what experience do you have in this position? Okay, behavioral, what makes you the best candidate for this? Okay, and then unstructured questions is more conversational, and it's to gauge the personality and the ability to interact with people. Okay, so it's more your how that person feels as an employee. Do they have a good personality? Are they outgoing? Are they reserved? What is their personality? That's more where you're going to get your unstructured question responses. Okay. After that, you also need to have an assessment form for each employee or each prospective employee. So you're going to have a list of how the person did and how you're going to assess each of their questions that you posed to them, how they responded, how they did in their testing. That's what your assessment forms are for. You also need to have interview training, which is generally either your agency director or your human resources director, explaining to whoever's going to be in the interview process how to interview, what the questions are going to be like, how you want to respond, what order you're going to ask questions in, and basically making sure that, we're going to go back to this, making sure we don't do any discrimination. That's a big reason why you do the interview training. Okay. F, conduct training for seasonal part-time employees. There are 6 steps when you're conducting this training for the employees. You have to conduct a needs analysis, which is your agency needs, your individual analysis, and your task analysis. Okay, so you need to analyze what that person is going to need to do to complete that job. Okay, you have to ensure the employee's readiness for training. Okay, make sure that they're qualified to be able to complete the training. Ensure the transfer of training. So your transfer of training is, you have a position, you want to transfer the skills in that training to the actual position. So if you have an umpire school, you want to make sure that the skills that were gained in the umpire school will transfer into umpiring your league. Okay? Then you want to develop an evaluation plan. So you have to evaluate people on your cognitive, your skill-based, and your affective skills. Cognitive is the knowledge of the position that you're tasked with. Skill-based are the specific skills that you need, that need to be required to perform that job. And then effective is how you are handling the public and how you respond and what your personality is, what your demeanor is. That's effective. Okay. You need to select a training method, which includes lectures, panel discussions, demonstrations, question and answer sessions. It kind of depends on what skill you're looking to focus on. So cognitive would be lectures probably. Skill-based would be your demonstrations. Affective could be your question and answer to see how they would answer specific scenarios. Okay, and then you need to continually monitor and evaluate the program. We went through formative and summative evaluation in the first PowerPoint. Formative happens during the activity or during that person's work day. Okay, so it's during the task. That's formative evaluation. Summative is when say a special event is over, then you'll form a summary evaluation. Summative means summary. Okay, so it's at the end of the task. Okay, and then we go to design and conduct training for staff, board members, advocacy groups, sports officials, and volunteers. So you utilize the same criteria as above when you're looking for staff or board members. Anyone other than your part-time or seasonal employees or contractors, use that same method for all of these other groups. Okay? Then H, develop work schedules for seasonal part-time employees and contractors. Parks and recreation programs generally occur when people have leisure time to spend. So you have to make sure that these part-time staff understand that they're going to be working on nights and weekends. Nights and weekends are a big deal in Parks and Rec because that's when people are off. That's when people can participate in our programs. Okay, so we have to make sure that the part-time and seasonal employees understand that if they want this job, that's when they're going to be working.
Not that I know of.
Sorry? No. Okay. Next would be to supervise.
This out of town, I think.
Uh-oh. Okay. Next would be to supervise, manage seasonal part-time employees and independent contractors. There are 7 dimensions of work tasks in these different seasonal or part-time employees.
That might be it. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and put our microphones on.
No, it's not called Parkview.
Just so that it's not interrupting, if that's okay. That would be great. Thank you. All right, so our 7 dimensions of work tasks are physical exertion. Okay, so that's important if there are people that are involved. That does not include discriminating if you cannot physically do the work that is required of you. Next would be your environmental conditions, which is your safety, your air pollution, your noise. If it's dark, if you're a maintenance worker, if there are odors that you have to deal with, especially in the pool, hazardous chemicals, your physical location of the work, whether it's inside or outside, one location or many. Time dimension is the hours of the day and days of the week. Again, nights and weekends. The degree of human interaction. If you're working just by yourself, if you're working amongst a group of employees, or if you're working with the public. Your competency requirements, which is the skills, knowledge, and abilities of the task and of the job that you're applying. And then your psychological characteristics influences your employee motivation and retention. So if you have a good personality, if you're an energized person, if you're very conscientious or hard workers, that's important in your characteristics for your part-time staff. Okay. Your independent contractors require good communication, okay, to develop clear expectations about the scope of work, agency oversight, and performance standards. When you're hiring independent contractors, it's very important that you have a specific, clear task that they know what they need to do to complete. Okay, so you need to develop a performance plan for your contractor, which is a review of progress reports, inspections, a review of complaints, and then a review of user end satisfaction. So once that contractor knows exactly what they're doing, once you've developed that scope of work, and scope of work means specifically what they are required to do for you, then you will go with this performance plan and how they accomplished that scope of work. Okay? After that, you're going to evaluate seasonal and part-time employee performance. Okay? Your probation performance appraisal is usually 6 months. Okay? And you'll do, generally you have a probation period when you hire a new staff, and within that 6-month time, you're going to do a performance appraisal to see if they'll be off of probation, stay on probation, or say, you're not going to work. Okay? The next would be your staff training performance appraisal, with the purpose of determining staff training needs. Okay, so if there's been something that's been lacking, like an escape plan or an evacuation plan or a lockdown or something like that, and it's not up to par, that's where your training performance appraisal will come in handy. Okay, then you're going to go with a performance improvement appraisal. This is if there's something wrong that your staff is doing, there's going to be specific criteria that they need to improve on within a specific timeline. So if there's an aspect of their job that they're not performing correctly or adequately, that's what this improvement appraisal is for. Okay, it's to get them up to speed, to get them performing the job that they're supposed to be performing at an acceptable level. Okay, then we're going to compensation performance appraisal. Okay, that is your merit raises. That's if your employee is doing something above and beyond and is really excelling in their position, that's where your compensation performance appraisal will come into play. All right. Next, we're going to go to administer disciplinary action other than termination for your seasonal part-time employees and contractors. And really, it's for your full-time staff as well. So there's a hierarchy of disciplinary action generally employed by a Parks and Rec agency. Okay, and what you want to remember, and this will be on the test more than likely, is that there is that hierarchy, and you have to go in a specific format in order to go with these disciplinary actions. So the first one would be a verbal reprimand. So basically saying, this is what you've done wrong, don't do it again. Okay, that's your verbal reprimand. And even with a verbal reprimand, it's a good idea to document that you've had a verbal reprimand. Okay, so it's not as severe as an actual written, but you still want to document that you did perform a verbal reprimand. Okay, after that, you go to a written reprimand. So that is if this activity or this behavior is still continuing, you can move to a written reprimand, which is where you write down, this is an official written reprimand of this employee. If the activity or the behavior is still continuing, you can move then to a suspension. And suspensions, depending on the severity of the behavior, suspensions can be with pay or without pay. And it can vary from up to a week to 2 weeks to 6 months. That's where your suspension comes into play. After suspension would be demotion, and demotion is you are at a lower level of employment because you can't handle or there's been issues with your current level of employment, and they'll demote you to a lesser position. And then finally, after that, you would go with discharge and termination. And a lot of times, municipalities and Parks and Rec agencies won't actually terminate the employee. They'll force the employee to resign, which is a little bit better for that employee. Generally, municipalities are pretty good about not just strict termination. They'll say, well, you have to be gone. We're going to allow you to resign. And that's generally the process that happens when there's a termination imminent. Okay. Next, we're going to make recommendations for retention, renewal, dismissal of seasonal part-time employees and contractors. Retention and renewal, okay, that means you want them back. That means they did a good job and you want them back. So it will occur at the end of a contract or at the end of a season or at the end of where you will need them for that time period. So a renewal is a little more formal. It's at the end of an actual contract. Okay, so if your contractors, the renewal, if you have a contract with employees or with a fitness instructor or with a maintenance staff or a janitorial staff, at the end of the contract, you'll renew it in order to keep those people on board. Retention is a little bit less formal, and it doesn't require a new contract. It basically says your part-time lifeguards are gone this year, we'll hire them back next year. Okay, it doesn't require a contract. So that's the difference between retention and renewal. Renewal is renewal of a contract. Retention is you just want your staff back, your part-time staff. Okay, and then dismissal and termination should always be private, and the agency should clearly specify what actions are ground for dismissal. So there needs to be a clear, generally it's in your city policy manuals as to what the infraction is and why it will lead to dismissal or termination. Also, you want to tell your part-time staff if there's just not employment opportunity anymore, why they would be dismissed. That happened, of course, in COVID. I mean, we lost all of our part-time staff because of COVID, and we had to let them know specifically, listen, we are not open. We can't hire you right now. So just make sure it's clear as to why either they're terminated or why they're being dismissed. Okay. Next up, we're going to managing volunteers. Volunteers is a little bit different than your part-time staff or people that you're actually paying. Okay. First thing is recruitment. Okay. You need to advertise the position and have your volunteer apply for the position available. You still want to have an application process so that you can vet your volunteers. Okay. You don't want volunteers that are going to be detrimental to your facility or your agency. Okay. Next, you're going to schedule your volunteers. Make sure your programs and your parks or facilities are operating in a safe and effective manner. Make sure that the schedule will work for your volunteers. It's a little bit more difficult to manage volunteers because they're not getting paid. So they can say, nah, I can't do it. I'm not going to. So you want to make sure you get in your recruitment process, you want to make sure that you get the employees that are invested in your agency. Supervision requires a little bit more close and frequent interaction because they may not have the skills or the degree of skills that an actual paid employee will have. You need to have a little bit more supervision, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and know what they're supposed to be doing. Okay. And then evaluation, you still want to evaluate your volunteers. It provides feedback to them and it provides value for that position. Even though it's a volunteer position, if you're providing feedback to them, then they know that you're invested in their help and in their work. So it's still important to evaluate your volunteers. And then recognition. We do a good job with this at TRPA with our volunteer recognition awards, but it's important to make sure that they know that they are contributing to our agency and that we appreciate them. So recognition is very important in volunteers as well. Okay. Now, conducting the hiring process for new employees. This is for new full-time employees. It's somewhat similar to your part-time employees, but it's a little bit obviously more involved. So there are 4 steps when you're going to hire a new employee. Okay. Recruit, review your applications, the interview process, and the hiring process. Okay. For the recruiting process of your position, your HR and your agency director needs to approve the job vacancy. They're going to say, yes, we understand that there's a vacancy, and yes, we're going to allow you to fill that position. Selecting members of a search committee. The search committee can, most of the time, is just going to be your human resource director and probably your agency director. When determining the budget for the recruitment is going to happen way before the recruiting process. It'll happen in your budget cycle when you're doing your budget prep. Okay, and then preparing and releasing job announcements. Once you've approved the job vacancy, then you're going to put it out to the public, out to TRPA, and say, this is the job that we are advertising for hire. Once the recruiting process is complete, you generally have a deadline for your applications to be submitted. Then you're going to review your applications. So you need to communicate with your job applicants. You need to manage your job applicant materials, their resume, their list of qualifications, their applications. You have to screen the job applicants. We went over that with the part-timers. You want to throw out any of the applicants that are not even close to qualified. Okay. Then you're going to you can test the applicants if you need to, if testing them on their skills, testing them on their knowledge. You're going to evaluate the recruitment results. Okay. Are there enough applicants to be able to move on to the interview process? Sometimes you may only get 1 applicant or 2 applicants and they're not qualified. So just because you've had a deadline doesn't necessarily mean you have to hire one of those 2 people. You could redo and go back to the recruiting process, okay, and hope for more applicants for your applicant pool, okay? And then you'll be filling out the application. Make sure that they're filled out correctly. Make sure you do have qualified applicants before you move to the interview process. Once you move to the interview process, you're going to pare down your applicants generally to about 3 to 5 applicants that you want to interview for the position. When you're in the interview position, you want to screen your interviews, which means you want to make sure that the questions are correct. Make sure you're not going to discriminate against any groups. Make sure your interviewers know what they're doing, know what the process is, know what the questions will be. Then you're going to go to your interview, okay? In your interview, you'll make sure that, again, you're not discriminating. Make sure that the questions are consistent with each applicant, okay? You don't want to have unnecessary favor between one or the other. So make sure all the questions are the same. Make sure the process is the exact same for all your interviewees. Then you're going to look through your selection tests. Make sure that in your evaluation of each interview, you have a scoring to where it's a fair scoring and you'll select the most qualified individual. Once you've done that, then you can go to your reference checks. And in your reference checks, if there's 1 or 2 applicants that are very close, you might want to check those references that would put one above, over top of the other if there are some applicants that are real close. But generally, your reference checks are going to be near the bottom of that interview process, okay? Once you've selected your person, you're going to go to the hiring process. Almost every single time, you're going to need a background check and a drug test. You will not generally do your drug test unless you've offered the applicant the position, and then you'll move to a background check and a drug test. You'll generally have a job offer or an acceptance letter that your applicant will sign, usually from either the city manager or the human resource director or your director of the agency. And then again, if it's a full-time position, usually you'll notify your declined applicants. Most of the time, it's either a phone call from your human resource director or a rejection letter saying, thank you very much for applying, but you didn't get the job, okay? Next up, we're going to enforce the policies and procedures of the Human Resource Department or union. So you have general agency orientation, okay? Your general agency, it focuses on matters relevant to all employees of the agency. That is your citywide policy manual. That's your general orientation, agency orientation. That is done most of the time through your human resource director. So it's your drug and alcohol policy, it's your vacation policy, it's your sick time policy. It's any of the general policies that you need to go over with your new hire, and it's usually your human resource director that will do that. Once they've gone through that, then you'll go to the specific department orientation. So if it's a programmer, they'll start off at City Hall, and then they'll come and go to the community center, and that's where your director or your community center manager or superintendent will focus on the topics that are unique to the employee's job, okay? So there's 3 stages of orientation. You've got your preliminary orientation, which is your initial contact from your human resource director, okay? You've got pre-duty, which is just prior to beginning the work at the agency. So it's basically showing the people around, showing where their office will be, showing, what different things they'll have to be able to complete their job, what their job duties are. That's basically your pre-duty before the job starts. It's usually a day or 2 once the person is hired. And then continuing orientation goes on until the employee is fully absorbed into the agency. So that's within your probation period, where you're basically explaining to your employee what it is they need to be doing on a daily basis or throughout the months as to what they're expected to be doing, okay? Then a follow-up of these, or of the orientation, includes these steps. The employee handbook, make sure they're well aware of the employee handbook, okay? Any policies that are related to fair employment practices and workplace safety, that's usually posted somewhere in a break room. You want to make sure that they are aware that they are there and what those policies are. Ensure that there's relevant supervisors that are trained on HR policies and enforcement procedures to make sure we're not discriminating, to make sure we're following all the state rules, all the ADA rules, and all of the department-specific rules. Make sure you establish a formal process for any consequences that the employee might violate through the HR policies and procedures, which is your city handbook. So make sure that there's like we said, the disciplinary process, okay? Make sure that is clearly in place so that your employee knows what it is that they're responsible for and what the consequences are if they don't follow those rules and regulations. And then training supervisors in how to apply HR policies and procedures in a fair and consistent manner. So you're training your supervisors on how to employ those policies, okay? Then we're going to evaluate personnel performance, which is to develop goals, recommendations, and work plans. Recognizing differences in employee performance levels create an atmosphere that is conducive to individual and organizational growth. Okay, you need to evaluate your personnel performance, evaluate how your staff are performing, okay, and what goals they need to accomplish throughout their career. Okay. Also, you need to be managing your time cards, your payroll, and your employee records. So you have your personnel records. You have time cards. If some people still do time cards, we did up until about a year ago, and then we moved to Kronos. So there could be an online time management system or the old-fashioned time cards. Your payroll records, you have to make sure the payroll is correct every 2 weeks or bi-monthly or however your agency does your payroll. And then any travel or leave requests, you have to manage all of those as well. You have to perform personnel actions, which is your disciplinary actions, your coaching, your recognition, any terminations or grievances that you might have or that employees might have amongst themselves. So some of the disciplinary actions that might happen to where you're doing something wrong, there are 3 different types of acts that an employee may do wrong or may have made a mistake in. You've got misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance. Okay? Misfeasance is lawful, so it's not against the law, but it's inappropriate in that position. Okay? So if you were doing something and it's not illegal, but it's not appropriate for the position or for where you are. Okay? Malfeasance is intentionally doing something illegal. So stealing would be malfeasance. Okay? And then nonfeasance is failure to act, where you have, as an employee, a duty to act in that position. Okay? So misfeasance is lawful but not appropriate for the position. Malfeasance is essentially a crime. And then nonfeasance is intentionally not doing something that is required for your position. It would be, nonfeasance would be not saving somebody as a lifeguard because you have a duty to act as a lifeguard, okay? Your grievance process for your employees. Your employee must meet with union representatives if there's a union. Generally, we don't have unions. It would be your HR director.
Hey, Dave.
And, yes.
I just wanted to say as we go, I apologize for the noise. We've got kids in the building for virtual school. That question on misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance, I had not less than 5 of them when I took the exam last year, and it was really difficult to figure out whether it was someone not following their job description,
right,
or if they were doing something unlawful.
Okay.
You know, it was all that gray area.
Right.
And boy, I'll tell you, I'm sure I got 3 of the 5 wrong, but it was so hard to, in the questions, they give you so much extra information.
Absolutely, and that's
And-
where it's so important to eliminate a couple of questions if you can.
Yeah. And
So knowing the basic differences, between the 3 acts is very, very important. Yeah.
very important.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. All right, so the grievance process is where your employee has something wrong, where there's a complaint from your employee. The steps are to meet with probably union representative or HR director and your supervisor to discuss the problem. Your HR director will communicate the grievance to the manager or the supervisor's manager or your agency director. The union grievance council or committee, if there is one, which could be lawyers, would discuss the grievance with your agency's management team, which would be your director, your city manager, and your human resource director. And then if the grievance remains unsettled, a third-party arbitrator may be consulted to settle the dispute. So that would be more along the lines of having attorneys, and then you'd have an arbitrator to find a settlement. Okay. Supervising interns and employees. An internship is a training experience for a specific amount of time that provides the student with an opportunity to apply academic knowledge and skills in a professional setting. Okay, so interns are generally not paid. Some interns are paid, and it's only for a definitive amount of time. Usually it's for a semester because interns are generally in school, and it's an opportunity to apply real life experience and knowledge in this professional setting while you're in school. That's what an intern is. All right, so that is the end of our human resources section. We are going to move to our test. Okay, so you can go ahead and unmute yourselves. We're going to go over these 10 questions. I will say the question, and then somebody will let me know what the answer is or what they think the answer is, and then we'll go through it. Okay. So for our review questions, the results of which activity serve as the foundation for the job description? Employee recruitment, job domain, position classification, or job analysis?
Job analysis.
Correct. Job analysis. Very good. That's what the first thing that we went over. Good deal.
Dave,
Okay, yes.
I'm sorry, this is Candy.
Yes.
I have a question in the chat.
Okay.
That can you rehire next season without opening roles?
Can we rehire or can an agency rehire?
An
I
agency.
suspect the question is, can an agency rehire?
They can. It depends on the agency's policy. There are times where you have to go through the application process again. But if you lay off employees, like our concessions employees will lay off at the end of October, we can hire them back at the next season without having to interview them or open the positions again. So I guess that would be more of a layoff, where if you do a layoff, you can bring them back without going through the application process and putting the job out to the public. Does that help? Okay.
I'm going to guess yes for now, unless I see something else pop up in chat.
Okay.
Thank
That sounds
you.
good. No problem. Okay, guys. Number 2, typical information collected while contacting references for job candidates include work history, age and gender, previous medical, and personal contacts.
Work history.
Work history.
Correct. Age and gender is illegal. Previous medical is illegal, and you don't need to do personal contacts when you're looking for job candidates. Work history is the only one that would be applicable there. That's an easy one to eliminate obvious incorrect answers. Number 3, when using volunteers, the assigned supervisor's responsibility includes all of the following except to prepare volunteers for paid positions, make available needed technical help, recruit and assign and evaluate job performance.
A.
Correct. Right. That the role of a volunteer is not to end up with a paid position. It's generally to help your agency perform different tasks or different programs. Okay, you're not preparing them to be paid. Number 4, which of the following would be an administrative function of performance appraisal? Communication of performance expectations for a merit salary increase, identifying areas in which the employees might wish to grow, linking performance appraisal results with employee training needs, or permitting the employee to comment on the supervisor's performance. A, correct. Communication of performance expectations for a merit salary increase. Okay, that would be the administrative. That'd be from your director. Why he would be doing that performance appraisal. Okay. Before discharging an employee with a pattern of tardiness, what is the most appropriate sequence for the following corrective actions? So you've got 3 different sequences: suspension of the job, a written warning, and a documented oral warning. What would the correct sequence be?
3, 2, 1. D.
3,
It
2,
would be
1.
D, correct, because you do your oral, written, suspension. Very good. Okay, consider the following structured interview question. You witness one of your staff stealing from the agency. How do you respond? This question best represents which of the following intellectual types? Would it be a situational, competency, biographical, or differential?
Situational.
Correct. Situational, right? Because it's stealing. So they're stealing from the agency. You're responding to that situation. Very good. It's not competency because, I mean, that's not going against their knowledge of the position. All right. It's a situation that happened. And it's not biographical because that's not, where they came from or anything else. So yes, situational is the correct answer. Very good. Which of the following is not an appropriate activity for the park and recreation professional to perform while supervising seasonal employees? So which is not, that's one where you really have to read that question. Conduct field observations of the employees to determine whether established standards for service delivery are being met. Complete interviews with the employees to determine religious views and preferences. Conduct performance appraisals of subordinate personnel, or communicate the agency's goals and objectives to the employees.
I'm gonna go with B.
B.
B, correct. Yep. Can't ever do anything religious views. That's illegal. So very good. That was a fairly easy one. What is the park and recreation professional's first step in the staff training process? Ensure staff are ready and able to apply the training content to the workplace. Selection of training methods. Determining specific training needs. And developing an evaluation plan to monitor the success of the training. Again, context clue, first step.
C.
Okay, we're going to first actually do C, which is what training needs are going to be needed to be accomplished. Once you've determined what the needs will be, then you'll move to the methods that it'll take to accomplish these needs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're going to get the needs
Yes.
first, what you're going to be needing to do before you find out how you're going to accomplish those needs. And then obviously evaluation plan would be at the end. And then the staff ready to apply the training. The needs are established, then the training methods, then making sure the staff are ready to apply those methods.
Is it C, Dave?
It is C first, yes.
Okay.
So basically this process would go needs, methods, staff, then evaluation. So C is the first step, okay?
Gotcha.
Now, according to federal, state, and local laws, employee discrimination is prohibited based on an employee's age, job performance, knowledge, skills, physical strength to perform critical aspects of the job.
A.
Age. Cannot discriminate on age. Okay? If they have all the other skills that required, you cannot discriminate on age. Very good. Whoop, sorry. All right, last one. A park and recreation professional has been contacted by a student who would like to do his or her internship at the agency. Prior to discussing the agency's internship requirements, it is most helpful for the professional to determine the university's internship requirements, develop a list of projects for the intern to complete, identify whether the intern requires a stipend, which is money, or housing assistant, or understand the intern's professional goals and how the agency would fit into these goals.
D.
D.
D is correct.
Understand.
That's right. Knowing what the professional's goals are and how your agency would fit before you're like, yeah, we can go ahead and take you in. Basically, you have to say, hey, is our agency going to be qualified for you to complete this internship? So yes, D is correct. Very good. So before we go back to mute, guys, is there any questions y'all have on human resources? Good. We did very well with that test. That was excellent. Again, it's real important just to make sure you see the context clues and kind of read each answer, especially on those ones where you're determining what number that they're going to be going, what sequence things happen in. You have to make sure that you read each question or each answer real carefully to determine the correct sequence. Okay. Awesome. All right. Next up, we're going to go to operations. Operations is going to be your biggest section of your CPRP exam. There's a whole bunch of different tasks that we have to go through. There's not a ton of blue terms, but there's a lot of information. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through that so that we can get to our practice test, because I really feel like the testing helps everybody the most. And we've got, you all are going to have this information with you at the end of the session, so you can go back to it and review all of the content. So I'm going to go through it pretty quickly and really just focus on the blue terms through the slides. Okay? So for operations, we're going to manage contract agreements with independent contractors. So your contract agreement, okay, are going to include the following deals. And a lot of this is going to be in your scope of work when you are doing a contract agreement. Basically, it needs to have specific goals and objectives that they need to accomplish, and you have to specifically state what each of those goals need to be. Okay, that's what all of this is. So you can look through each of those. There's also insurance, indemnification, termination of agreement. You always have to have that included as well, and the signatures of all the parties. Okay. B, conduct assessments of specific programs, areas, products, and services. A needs assessment is to provide accurate feedback on community attitudes, opinions, and perceptions of the park and recreation agency's resources. So your needs assessment, okay, is very important when you're applying for a grant, when you're doing a master plan. It's basically saying, what are the needs of the community and how is your agency accomplishing those needs in your programming, in your facilities, and in your parks. Okay. A natural resource assessment must take both the development and conservation into account. Okay. So a natural resource assessment, an example of that would be doing a greenway, okay, that's following a river. Are you taking the correct action when you're developing your greenway to protect your bank, to protect your river? Okay, that's what a natural resource assessment needs to take into account. All right, the environmental impact, basically, the access to your facility, your developmental features, and the maintenance of your facility that you're constructing. Okay, that's a natural resource assessment. your needs assessment for target populations. The target market, we went through target marketing in our marketing section. Target market will be measurable, okay? The park and recreation agency must be able to access the market that you're targeting. And what's the size that you are looking at when you're doing a needs assessment for your population, okay? So the needs assessment is directly affiliated with your target market. All right, so if you're looking at the senior population, what are the needs of your senior population? And what's the size of that population? Okay, conduct inventories of assets, equipments, and supplies. You need to inventory that by inventorying your equipment, your supplies, and all of the assets that your department has. It provides the professional a clear picture of the present state and condition of the agency's facilities and equipment. Basically, it's letting you know exactly what you have in your department. Okay? Conduct an inventory of your programs. Okay? Internal and external programs. So review your current recreation-related opportunities within the given area and prepare a recreation inventory for each given area. Okay? So for us, for example, for Pigeon Forge, our inventory of programs would be, what programs are we providing at the community center? What programs are we providing at Ware Farm Park, at our baseball field? What programs are we providing at our football field? What programs are we providing on our greenway? That's your inventory of programs. Okay, internal would be inside the community center. External would be, are we doing any programs that the community can accomplish themselves? Okay. Establish relationships with outside organizations. Communication is key in developing partnerships. Communication is your number one thing. Okay. Key methods of communicating with your outside organizations are speaker bureaus, public meetings, and employee relations. Okay. You want to make sure that when you are partnering with a school system or with another city or another municipality or another department within your city or within your municipality, that you have good communication between them so that everyone knows exactly what their expectations are. Okay. Collaborate with related organizations. Some of these communication techniques will be important. Frequent phone conversations, discussions with other professionals like us, okay, TRPA conferences. That's an excellent way to network and to collaborate with fellow employees as to see if we're doing correct things or what programs we may want to offer, how we want to handle COVID, how we're doing our operating procedures. Discussions with other professionals is incredibly important, and we've really seen it this year. Okay. Monthly meetings of a community council. Most of your municipalities are going to have council meetings. It's a very good idea to be in those meetings to know what's going on within your city and within your organization. And integrating an agency's master plan or a plan with those of the larger park and recreation systems. So for us, we'd be implementing our master plan and we'd want to have the input of the national park because we're right beside them. Okay, or the other municipalities, Gallenberg and Sevierville. Okay, you want to integrate your master plan or your plan with other people that would be affected by your plan. Okay. Follow energy efficient and environmentally friendly procedures. Okay, these are our blue ones. So our disposal methods, which is waste prevention, recycling is big, composting, purchase of energy efficient supplies. Okay, so that's one method of your energy of being energy efficient and would be your LED lighting, purchasing your energy. You want to have energy efficient components of your community center or of your facilities. Water, make sure you're conserving your water. Storm water if you need it for watering your plants. You want to have reuse water if you can, and then transportation, energy efficient vehicles if you can. Okay. LEED. LEED is an important term that will probably be on the test. So remember that. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. Okay. That is when you're constructing a facility. If you have LEED certification, that's what it means. It means that you are doing what you can to conserve energy and to be environmentally friendly. And there are 3 levels of LEED certification. It's silver, gold, and platinum. And it generally refers to facilities. Okay. And then recycling, you want to develop procedures and processes to recycle paper, glass, and plastic. Okay. Next, we're going to implement maintenance standards. So you want to make sure you have park maintenance standards, facility maintenance standards, just routine maintenance of your inventory, preventative maintenance to make sure nothing breaks down. Okay, you want to inspect your basketball goals. You want to inspect any moving parts. That's very important just to make sure nothing goes wrong. We had a terrible incident with my son in this winter this year where one of our basketball goals fell and almost fell right on top of Brock. Brock's my son. And it was crazy scary, and you never would have thought it would ever happen. But we've instituted and implemented preventative maintenance, making sure that the goals are secure so that that doesn't ever happen again. But it came crashing down and just shattered right 1 foot from my son's head. So I would have killed him, and it was crazy scary. But that's why it's important to have preventative maintenance. And then any repairs or replacements. The reason for preventative maintenance with that goal, with the basketball goal, for instance, we had no idea that there was anything wrong with it. And so you can't make a repair if you don't know there's something wrong, and you won't know it's wrong until catastrophe hits. So preventative maintenance is incredibly important. All right, staying current with current changes in applicable regulatory agencies and policies, okay? So you have to be aware of the regulatory policies impacting your agency, which is OSHA for your safety, Environmental Protection Agency, Equal Employment, any of those things you have to make sure that you're aware of. Okay, maintain information systems, which is your data entry, your use permits, your reservation systems, and your registration systems. The different types of registration methods. Walk in into your community center, for instance, mail in, which almost no one does, phone reservations, fax reservations, almost no one does. Web-based is your big one, where a lot of people are doing online registrations. We are capable of, but not yet doing, but I'd say 75% of municipalities do online registrations, and then your registration and reservation forms that they'll fill out the form and give it to you with their money for whatever program. Okay. Registration and reservation procedures, you make sure you have those in place. Generally, that is online, and you can have specific procedures as to once you've filled that out, what happens next, and then any equipment use records. So if you're checking out a basketball or checking out pickleball equipment, what is your record for those equipment use? Okay, next, provide direct supervision of specific facilities and areas. You want to make sure you have opening and closing inspections, daily inspections, seasonal inspections, monitoring your activities, and your operations checklist. All of those are very important depending on what activity you are performing. Seasonal would be your outdoor pool. Daily inspections would be your basketball courts. Monitoring what activities are going on would be your after school activities. And then operations, just make sure everything's functioning the way it should be. Provide input for updating standard operating procedures. So your operations manual should include all of the following here: your security, staff, utilization, inspection, any issues that you may have. That's where your operation manual should include any of those issues. Your policy is your broad agency-wide standards, like your anti-discrimination policy, your ADA policy, whatnot. So a policy is your broad agency-wide standard for the entire agency. A rule is a specific guideline on how to act, like no cell phones during meetings, okay? So policy is agency-wide, rule is a specific guideline, and a procedure is a chronological sequence of what you're supposed to do. So when someone applies for a membership, these are the steps that take place. So policy is agency-wide, rule is a specific guideline, and procedure is exactly what you're supposed to do, step by step, okay? Provide reasonable accessibility accommodations, which is your ADA. ADA insured individuals are not excluded from service programs and activities because your buildings or your programs are inaccessible. So ADA includes buildings and programming, okay? Analyze operating data. So when you're analyzing your data, you need to look at attendance, okay? All of the things that go with attendance. You need to go with financial, how much things cost, what you're budgeted, what the costs are going to be to perform either your program or the operation of that facility. Your revenue data, how much money you're making, how much money you are taking in from that program or facility. Your expenditure data, this is important. These are going to be on your test, I'm sure. So you have to know the differences between these expenditures. Okay, expenditures just means what you're spending, what money is what you're paying. So encumbrances are your purchase orders, your contracts, and your salary commitments. Okay, those are your big ticket items. How much salary you're committed to the department, what purchase orders you're using for big ticket items, and then what contracts you have that you're going to pay this amount to this company. Your contractual services are services rendered by individuals or organizations other than parks and recreation agencies. Okay, anything that people are doing, like umpires. Okay, you're going to pay your umpires a contract. You're going to have a contract with your umpires that you're going to pay this amount to them. So they're not employed by Parks and Rec. They have a contract. Okay, capital outlay is expenditures for land or existing structures, improvements, or renovations. So it's purchasing land would be your capital outlay. Your renovation of a pool would be capital outlay, okay? Any improvements on, say, your baseball field would be a capital outlay, okay? And then debt service is expenditures for the retirement of debt or interest payments. Okay, so if your city has debt, that's what that expenditure is. You're spending money to pay off the debt. Okay, and then maintenance and marketing are other operating data that you have to pay attention to. Develop standard operating procedures and manuals. The primary intent of operating procedure is to ensure user safety with the park or facility. So when you're developing your operations procedure and your operations manual, the first thing that you're worrying about is the safety of your users, okay? Compiling information to defend your agency in the event of accidents, okay? Interview witnesses, record evidence and information, and then preserve when feasible any physical evidence that you might have. It is very, very, very important. Number one, record anything that happens. Write it down, no matter what it is, always write it down, because that will do nothing but help. It is always your friend to write down anything that happens in your department. Enforce code of conduct for facility users and program participants, coaches, and staff. Facility users and program participants, that you need to have an expectation of behavior and consequences. Okay, so members at a community center, you should have rules that are written, that are posted. This is how you're supposed to act in the community center, or in your weight room, or in the basketball court. Okay, that's program participants. And then coaches and staff, generally for a program or a sport, you want to have a personnel manual for that. explaining in detail what is expected of your coaches and of your staff. Okay, same thing with your volunteers. That'd be a volunteer one as well. They're held to a higher standard than your facility users and program participants. All right, develop an emergency management plan, which is basically to identify your threats, to create an emergency operations plan, what happens when an emergency happens, develop an evacuation plan. That's part of your emergency management plan or your emergency action plan. Those are the two terms that people use or that agencies use, or either emergency management or emergency action, your EAP. And then establish mail handling precautions and protocols. Okay, those are your four main areas in an EAP or an emergency management plan. Always respond to emergencies, incidents, first aid, and CPR. Again, document everything. If there's an accident, for any accident, if you have to give out a Band-Aid, make sure you write it down. So an accident report is filled out for any and all accidents that might happen to your staff or to your patrons, okay? And then an incident report is any customer complaints, any behavioral problems, anything that doesn't result in an injury or an accident is an incident report, okay? So if something is broken, you write it down as an incident report. If somebody broke something, okay? If it's not an injury, then it would be an incident, okay? Develop risk management, safety, security plans, policies, and procedures. Okay. That would be routine inspections, building safety, security procedures, and emergency plans. Okay. That all goes in with your emergency action plan. Next is to implement risk management, safety, and security plans. Make sure that your facilities and your sites are safe. Make sure that the programs that are being completed at your facility are safe. Make sure that you conduct safety inspections on a daily, depending on what the facility is, on a daily or monthly or quarterly basis. Identify any hazardous materials, an operation protocol for those hazardous materials. That's called your MSDS sheets. Basically, MSDS is your hazardous materials, okay? It's a big, I think it's yellow. It's a big yellow book that you need to have generally anytime you have any hazardous materials in your facility. It needs to be in your facility, accessible to all of your staff, and all of your staff that handles those chemicals or those hazardous materials need to be knowledgeable on what those materials are and what the safety protocols are for each one of those materials. That's what your MSDS manual is. And then ensure proper release forms and waivers and agreements. Okay. Develop a plan to accommodate participants with disabilities. This is your ADA. This is the date that you must remember that you will be on the test somewhere 100%, I would say. ADA states that the physical alterations to public accommodations undertaken after January 26, 1992 be readily accessible and usable by people with disabilities to the maximum extent feasible. January 26, 92, okay? I don't know if they will have updated the CPRP exam to include our transition plan that all of municipalities have had to do, but all municipalities have had to have a transition plan, which is ADA, to ensure that all of their facilities within the municipality are up to ADA standards. So they had to have the plan in place, I think December of last year, and they have to start making these changes to update all of the facilities and all of the programs within a city or within a municipality. That's what a transition plan is, if that's on the test. I don't know if it will be or not because it's fairly new, but that's what a transition plan is. Okay. Provide customer service, both internal and external. Okay. Internal customer service is communication and access to information. That basically means that your staff is aware, okay, of what all the policies are, of what all the programming is, of what's going on in your facility. Okay. It's communicating to your staff what you are offering. External customer service is the quality of service to your patrons, to the public. And it has to be relevant to the customers and relevant to the agency. So internal is making sure your staff knows what's going on. External is your staff communicating with the public. Okay? Manage customer relationships. So you have service recovery, which is to empower the frontline staff to handle situations when they go wrong. So service recovery is your frontline staff having the power and the authority, okay, to help solve problems. That's basically what it means. So if a member, or if somebody came in for a day pass and they had a significant problem, it's empowering your frontline staff, it's empowering, say, your front desk staff to give a refund, to give a free pass. It's empowering them to solve the problem right there at the start. Because generally, if that happens, then there will not be anything further. There won't be any further action. So that's what service recovery means. Recognition and retention activities provide an opportunity to receive feedback from the customers and to develop a formalized response plan to that feedback. So recognition and retention, so that is the patrons or the community or the public to make recommendations to your frontline staff, and your frontline staff having a plan to help solve that problem or to address whatever the issue that is brought up. Okay, managing properties. That is, make sure that they're safe and secure, make sure that the property and user needs are met, develop an operational resource needs, any legal requirements, which are your building codes, your accessibility requirements, your ADA transition plans, your environmental standards, your Environmental Protection Agency standards, the EPA, your OSHA standards, and any occupation-related requirements. Okay, that's managing your properties. Monitor your capital improvements, which are your renovations, your building of new facilities, any of your new buildings, your new big ticket items. So capital improvements include land acquisition, purchasing of land, park and building construction or large renovation, or other costly equipment purchases that can be included in the capital budget as well, like it would be a truck or a big, large machinery for your park staff, a big mower. Any big ticket items are capital improvements, okay? Providing input regarding capital improvements based on operational needs. So these are your three big plans that you need to remember, okay? Your comprehensive plan is utilized to identify short and long-term priorities for an agency, okay? This is what you want your agency to accomplish in basically a 1 to 10 year span, okay? And then in that comprehensive plan is your master plan, which is a subset of your comprehensive plan, and it focuses on your agency's specific physical resources, okay? Your specific physical resources. It's what your department has, and then your comprehensive plan is what you want your department to accomplish. So there's a big grant program going on right now, the LPRF and LWCF and RTP programs. This big grant program is for any municipalities to submit grants. I think the deadline's the 8th of October, I believe. And a big component of that this year is that your municipality has a comprehensive master plan. So this master plan is incredibly important to your department to guide your department in what they want to accomplish in the future. That's the purpose. It's what your department has and what it needs to fulfill its goals for the next 10 years generally. It's usually 1 to 10 years. Okay? And then a strategic plan is the development or revision of your agency's mission and vision statements. So a strategic plan takes your mission statement and your vision statement and says, this is how we're going to accomplish what we're looking in our mission and vision statements. Okay? We're going to analyze trends and best practices. So there are three terms in these trends and best practices we need to know. A trend is a prevailing tendency or inclination that's generally gaining momentum, okay? It's tendencies in your population. So like people are getting older. All the baby boomers are now seniors. So your aging population is a trend that is continuing. Childhood obesity, sadly, is still a trend that is continuing that we need to focus on. Work time dynamic, okay? People who are working too much or not enough is a trend, okay? A fad is a short-term burst in interests or way of being. I know you all remember, I'm sure, Pokemon Go from about 2 or 3 years ago. There were people walking all over everywhere looking for these little Pokemons. But that is a fad. It also, and now no one is. I think it's still around. I actually talked with Jacob, my community center manager, yesterday about it. And I guess it's still there. But I mean, when it first came out, which I think was in maybe 2017, there were people all over the place. That is a fad because it's gone now. Okay. And then best practices are strategies that have produced superior results for years after years. Best practices means that this has been proven to be an effective method. That's pretty much what that means. Okay. Next, we want to identify needs for new facilities, services, and capital improvements. That is where your needs assessment comes in. Okay. In your needs assessment, okay, you want to do what is called a SWOT analysis. That is incredibly important. I think I had that in another slide, but you want to have a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis is you can analyze your parks, you can analyze your community centers, you can analyze your facilities, and you can analyze your programming. Okay, a SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, that's what a SWOT analysis, S-W-O-T. Very important. It's going to be on the test. I guarantee it. Okay, basically, so for your programs and your facilities in your department, you're looking at strengths of each program or facility, weaknesses, opportunities to improve, and threats to that facility or program. Okay, that's what you need to have in your needs assessment survey. And then develop and recommend agency-specific policies, regulations, codes, laws, and rules. All employees need to understand the organization's policies, rules, and procedures in order to interpret them to the public. Okay, so from your frontline part-time staff to your Parks and Rec director, they all need to be very, very familiarized with your policies and rules and procedures so that when someone from the public comes up and says, why can't my 5-year-old be in the community center by himself? Well, these are the rules and regulations and policies that we have in place as to why that's not okay. So that's why all of us need to know what those procedures are, okay? And then participating in the evaluation and revision of policies, regulations, codes, laws, and rules. You want to evaluate your rules because they could become stagnant and outdated. You're always constantly reviewing. Generally, rules and regulations are reviewed once a year. But an example of that would be, and even in ours, on our rules and regulations, it says no animals allowed in the community center except for seeing eye dogs. Well, that's not even a term anymore. It would now be service animals. So the terminology needs to be changed because of that. So you have to evaluate your rules and your regulations in case they're no longer relevant. And then revision, you need to revise sometimes if they're not clear rules or regulations, you need to revise. That's where a revision is to make sure that it's a little more easily understandable for your rules and regulations. And then ensure agency compliance with national, state, and local laws and regulations. So your agencies must successfully locate, review, and implement the applicable regulations while recognizing the potential impact they might have on the agency. Make sure you're complying with ADA, with any state guidelines, with any health codes. Just make sure you're in compliance with all of those in any of your programming and any of your facilities. So that was super duper quick. But again, you can go back to the slides and kind of dive into it a little bit further. Excuse me, but I wanted to have a little bit of time to be able to do our practice test and then our overall practice test as well, because it's really the most important part of this session, I'd say, because we have all of our people here to help, go through each question. So we're going to go to our operations practice test. If you guys will unmute your microphones, we'll go over each of these questions and see what the correct answer would be. Okay, guys?
Dave, you have
Yes.
a comment in the chat.
Okay.
SDS is the same MSDS for hazardous material.
Is what now? I'm sorry, Candy.
SDS is
Yes, it's the same. That's the same one.
MSDS for hazardous material.
Correct. Yes. Yes. SDS is the same as the MDS. Yes. That's what that means. Correct. All right. So, a community parks and recreation master plan is a document that provides which of the following: a personnel schedule, an inclusive framework for orderly planning, evaluation information on program services, or information about maintenance operations. What do we think, guys?
B.
B, correct. Inclusive framework for orderly planning. It's everything that your department has currently. It's all the programming, it's all the facilities, it's all the parks. It's all inclusive. Very good. And then your comprehensive plan is how you're going to make it better. Okay. Which of the following is the best reason for conducting routine facility inspections? Decrease vandalism, guarantee patron safety, prevent theft, reduce liability risk.
D.
B.
B, first thing, always, your first thing is safety. Okay. Reduce liability could be one, but always safety first. Okay. This one was fairly easy to where you could eliminate two of them, but reduce liability risk, I could see where people would be like, well, that's probably true. We want to make sure we cover our butts, but guaranteeing user or community safety is always going to be number one. According to the ADA, any facility built or modified after what year must be readily accessible for people with disabilities?
1992.
1992, that's the year we have to remember. Very good.
Yeah.
That's it. Yep. Do not forget that one. Okay, which of the following should not be included on an accident report? The location, the contact information, detailed witness testimonies on whose fault it was, or personal addresses of individuals involved in the accident.
C.
B.
I would say
B.
B.
The correct answer is actually C. When you are completing an accident report, you want to make sure that you just put down the actual facts that are objective facts of the accident. Like this person fell and hurt his ankle, not he hurt his ankle because somebody pushed him because they're mean and angry at each other. You don't want any subjective materials in your accident report. So when you have a witness on whose fault it was, that's subjective. The witness might have a grudge on whoever was injured or whoever may have been involved in the accident. So you don't want to have anything where there's any subjective material. Does that make sense? So when you're completing your accident report, it's all objective. This is specifically what happened, where it happened, what time it happened, what people it happened to, not whose fault it was. Okay? So the actual answer on 4 would be C. 5, the park and recreation professional has developed a policy manual for a recreation facility and wishes to make the manual available to the general public and users of the facility. The most appropriate method to accomplish this task would be
A.
correct, A. That would give the most opportunity for the most amount of people and the all of the general public an opportunity to see the manual. distributing copies of the manual to all facility users would not be all of the general public. So when you look at that question, you need to look at general public as your context clue. Okay. Mailing copies of the manual is not feasible. I mean, that would be very, very costly. So that's where the copy of the manual online would be accessible basically to everyone. Okay. The primary benefit of developing policies and procedures for the maintenance of a recreation facility is to reduce agency liability, maintain consistent facility management, enhance user safety, control facility expenses.
B.
Safety first.
What was it?
Safety first.
Safety first. You got it. Excellent. C, enhance user safety. Always safety first. Good job, guys. 7, a park and recreation agency identifies the level of maintenance that is acceptable through which of the following? The size of the budget, the frequency of maintenance inspections, the qualifications of maintenance employees, or the establishment of maintenance standards.
B.
It is actually D. So you want to have your standards first, okay? You want to make sure that people know exactly what is to be expected in their maintenance department, okay? And in those standards would be this is how many times or this is the frequency that you have to do these inspections. So you have to establish your standard first before you can start your inspections. Again, it's a sequence question as to what you need to do in that sequence. So qualification, I mean, the first two are easily, you can take out A and C pretty easily, and then you go to sequence, which would be, what would you do first? Would you do the inspections first, or would you establish what needs to be done first? And then in those standards, you come up with how often you need to inspect, okay? So 7 is actually D. All right. Upon arrival to open a facility, the recreation professional finds that the door is open. Which of the following actions should be taken first? Lock the door, call local law enforcement, search the building, or wait for other staff members to arrive?
B.
Safety.
B. Safety first. Good job, guys. Yes. Call local law enforcement. That's the correct answer. Always safety first. And if that ever does happen to you, that's the first thing you do. And then you can go in together with your law enforcement and make sure no one's there or nothing's been damaged. There's no hazards or anything like that. Okay, 9, blank are made to finance projects that are costly, such as land acquisition, park development, and facility construction or renovation. Operational expenditures, revenue surplus or recovery projections, capital expenditures, or facility, parks, or surplus funds.
C.
Capital improvements, capital expenditures. Anything that is a capital item in your budget are your big, big ticket items. So any capital projects, anytime you see the word capital, you know it's a big, big project, which would be land purchasing, which would be big renovations, which would be big machinery or vehicles. Anything big time is going to be capital expenditures. So land acquisition, park development, developing a new playground or a new park, or any new facility that's constructed is your capital expenditure. Okay? And then number 10, a major disadvantage of program location registration systems is limited opportunities for registration staff to interact with their participants, a reduction of actual programming time due to long registration lines, increased likelihood of cash handling problems, disruptions with other programs in the facility or park. That one's a little bit tough, but so if you're registering your program and you're at 5 different locations, what would the problem be, the biggest problem be with that?
A.
A.
C.
Okay, it probably wouldn't be A because you're still at that location with the staff or with the participants that are participating in that program. So you can talk with them at that location. Okay, the actual programming time, the programming time is not going to start until after your registration is over. So it wouldn't be B either. The increased likelihood of cash handling, that is possible because you're not at a community center. You're not at one central location that's going to handle all of the revenue coming in. And then disruptions with other programs. Generally, you're not going to have that at, on the park or in the baseball field. It'll be like probably in the parking lot or somewhere other than actually at the facility, inside the facility. So the correct answer is actually C, which is the increased likelihood of cash handling problems. Because you're at 5 different locations, trying to coordinate with all of your program people to handle your cash correctly, you could be coming into problems with that. That one's a tough one, but that's the reasoning that I can come up with as to why the cash handling problems is the right answer. Just look here. That is our operations test. Okay. So yeah. So when you're doing your cash handling, you don't want to be right at the location. Again, another issue could be that they wanted to pay by credit card and you don't have credit cards at that location. If you're at a field, I mean, they'd have to bring cash, and that would be difficult as well. So that's why that answer is the cash handling. Okay, guys? And now comes the most fun. It's our practice test. So what we're going to do, we've got 50 questions that we're going to go over. I will read the question. You all can look at the different answers, and we'll see if we can come up with the correct answers for each of these questions. And if you have any questions, please stop me, and we'll go over why we think that those are the right answers. Okay, guys? So we've got 50 questions to end our study session, and then we'll be good to go. Does anybody have any questions? All right, let's get to it. Number 1, to best understand the internal and external situation the agency is operating in requires a situational analysis. What is the main element of the situational analysis that looks at internal operations and external environments?
B.
SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Very good, guys. That's it. Good job. Number 2, your agency is updating its logo and developing a marketing plan to showcase the new logo and make it recognizable by the entire community when they see it. The agency is doing what?
Branding.
Branding, correct. Logo and marketing plan is where you can come into branding. Okay, logo is where you're going to tie your branding to this question. So that was very good. Number 3, we didn't go through finances today, so this might be tough. But in the following example, what is 1,000 services personnel considered?
I think maybe budget classification.
It is indeed budget classification. Very good. So your line item would be 1,000. Okay. Your cost control center would be salaries, regular, full-time. Okay. Your budget object would be in administration, recreation, golf, or operations. Your budget classification would be 1,000 services. Okay. So that was very good. That's not easy, but that's part of finances, which I've got in the first presentation. But yeah, it's budget classification is the correct answer. Very good. Number 4, which of the following is considered a variable cost? Marketing, instructor, participant lunches, or room rental?
C.
C.
C, lunches.
The answer is lunches, because depending on how many people are participating in your program, that number will vary. Okay, so it's a variable cost. That number will change. Variable cost is a cost that changes depending upon the number of participants you have. All right, number 5, someone leaves your organization. Your human resource director decides it's time to examine this position to see exactly what the person does, what skills they use, how much time they spend on tasks, and what sort of working conditions exist. The HR director is performing what task?
Analysis.
Job analysis. Very good. That one's pretty easy. It's all encompassing, so you know it's going to be the analysis of what that job actually is. Very good. Number 6, interview questions for candidates are driven by the resume of the person, the job announcement, the need to see how the candidate thinks on their feet, or the essential functions of the job description.
Essential functions of the job description.
Correct. That's right. Because it should be the same for everybody, so it's not the person being interviewed. The announcement is just a blurb as to what the job is. Thinking on their feet is not where you're going to have your questions developed. It's the essential functions of what that job entails. Very good. You are doing a performance appraisal on an employee. What should the performance appraisal be based on? The personality, the job description, the job tasks, or the job announcement?
C.
Description.
Job description.
Job description. That's right. B is correct. Your job description. Job tasks are a little bit more involved. They're the specific functions of the job, but your performance appraisal will be on the job description. Okay. Number 8. A disciplinary action can be taken for all of the following except attendance, safety, performance, personality.
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 Yep, that's an easy one. Very good. Okay, responsibility for the development of a checklist for assuring uniformity and thoroughness of a facility opening and closing procedures typically lies with
B.
B. Now, that was actually the first question that I showed you guys at the start of this presentation. The context clue would be facility opening and closing, where you have your first line facility supervisor. That's why you would use him, and that's where you read the question and look at your context clues. Wouldn't be your director, obviously. It would not be your security officer or your park superintendent. It's your facility supervisor. Good job. Number 10, you've assigned as the agency liaison to the project team overseeing the construction of a new recreation center. As the project progresses, the agency decides it wants a split half Dutch door for the entrance to the office. Which of the following procedures would you use to accomplish this? So you have
Change.
a new construction. Sorry?
I said, would it be a change?
It would be a change order. Yep. So when you have a contract and in that contract something happens to where you need to make a change, it's considered a change order. Okay, very good. Number 11. During the past 6 months, the agency has been sued 5 times by individuals who entered one of the agency's facilities soon after it opened and were injured by a premises defect. Which of the following maintenance functions should the Parks and Recreation professional improve in order to reduce the number of incidents described above? So when you look at this, you're probably not going to have a patron use record, so you can get rid of that. Daily housekeeping you probably would not have. So you can limit it to A or D. And scheduled inspections is correct. Okay. A building could still be in compliance and have something not working correctly. So it would not be compliance with state regulations. It's scheduled inspections. When it's something that happens over and over again, generally it's your inspections that are faulty. Okay, so A, scheduled inspections is the correct answer. Number 12, when developing facility safety and security plans, the Parks and Recreation professional should what?
Well, you need the inspections.
Yep, we're doing inspections again, okay? So safety and security plans. The question before was there was people suing because there was faulty operation of facilities, okay? And for facility safety and security, you want to make sure you have checklists and inspections. So you're going to develop inspection checklists for each facility. That's the correct answer.
So when doing, like when, with this question, safety is first,
Right.
but I guess I'm just thinking too much. Would, like, creating a universal plan, you could create a universal plan at all facilities, which would then develop the inspection. So I guess I'm thinking too much of that because I'm just thinking about developing a plan for all facilities, which would include the development of inspection checklist.
That is true, but you're developing a specific facility safety plan. So in the question, when it says facility safety and security plan, it deals directly with that facility.
Okay.
If it said department safety and security plan, then you could create a universal plan that's used at all facility sites.
Okay.
But when it's just that specific facility, that's why you would have to go to the inspection checklist. You'd have to move down in that sequence because it would be unique to that facility. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. 13. General supervision involves which of the following? Teaching a new skill to 3 participants, direct contact with participants, such as spotting and gymnastics, the leader overseeing a broad area, such as an open gym, or leading activities for 8 to 9-year-olds in a day camp.
C.
So this one is easy to eliminate things. General supervision means that you're overseeing a general area. So teaching a new skill to 3 participants is very focused. Direct contact is direct supervision. So the 2 different supervisions are general and direct. So when you have direct contact with participants, that wouldn't be it. And leading activities for 8 and 9-year-olds is also very specific. So it's pretty easy to eliminate and to see what the main difference in all those answers are. So your answer would be C, the leader overseeing a broad area. Because you're generally supervising, you're looking at the entire area, not just a specific program. So the answer is C, the leader overseeing a broad area, such as an open gym. Okay. 14, direct. So there you go. Direct leadership, which goes in line with direct supervision. Direct leadership entails 3 phases. In which phase would you be most concerned with group composition, activity planning, and risk management? So this is another sequential question. It's what sequence would you do this in? So what phase would you have group composition, activity planning, and risk management?
A or D?
A.
Okay, good. So the correct answer, when you're looking at group competition, when you're planning the activity and you're thinking about what your risks would be, you wouldn't be doing the activity yet, so you'd be preparing for that activity. So your risk management, your group composition, you're not going to prep your group before you compose your group. You're not going to prep the people that you have before you've even put them together. You're not going to perform the activity until the activity has been planned. So preparation is the correct answer. So A, good job. 15, an athletic supervisor of a public park and recreation agency is designing an end-of-season softball tournament for their 10-team softball league. The athletic supervisor wants the tournament to last 2 weeks and has field access Monday through Friday. Due to scheduling conflicts, only 2 games can be played per evening. Which of the following alternative program plans will maximize play and fit the resources available? Challenge tournament, a round robin tournament, a double elimination tournament, or a single elimination tournament?
Double.
Correct. Double elimination. Challenge and round robin for a 10-team league would take way, way too long. And a single elimination would take too short. If you did a single elimination, you'd be done in 1 week. So the context clues here would be 10-team softball league and would be 2 weeks. Those are your, and then Monday through Friday. So basically you've got 10 teams, you've got 5 days, and you've got two games, 5 days for the 2 weeks. So you have 10 days, 10 teams, and 2 games per night. And that's where you know you don't have enough time for round robin or challenge, and it's too much time for single elimination. So your answer would be double elimination. Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the answer to 14?
14 would be preparation. So it'd be, with the group composition, activity planning, and risk management, you're preparing for that leadership phase. All right. 16, at its core, selecting advertising for a recreation program should be based on what the target market watches, listens to, and reads, the agency's ability to develop the advertising message in-house, the advertising content's application to social media outlets, or what role the school district can play in the distribution of the advertising material.
A.
A, you're looking at your target market and you're looking at what that target market is paying attention to. Okay. So it doesn't matter, if you can do it in-house or if you have to go outside to market to them. Doesn't matter if it's on social media, and it doesn't matter for the schools. It matters what your target market is wanting and how they're accessing it. Okay. Very good. Number 17, what changes would you make to the organizational chart without changing the direct supervisor? Okay. So what changes would make this organizational chart correct, without changing the direct supervisor? So those are your 4 options. What would you do to this organizational chart to make it correct? So there's a hierarchy of management that you need to look at here. And what would you do to make the organizational chart correct?
A.
Correct. So right now you got your director with your superintendents, which shouldn't happen. So you would move the director down. And right now your coordinators are also on the same line as your director. So you'd move the coordinators down. On your organizational charts, you have to make sure that each line is consistent. So if you see this on the exam, basically just look at each line of your organizational chart and make sure they're all comparative. So yes, A is the correct answer for 17. You'd move the director down, and then you'd move your 2 coordinators down. Very good. 18, which of the following are considered to be more beneficial to the community than the individual? Programs, facilities, parks, or sport courts? So what is the most beneficial to the community as a whole?
C.
Parks, correct. Definitely not sports courts, definitely not programs. So your 2 options are facilities and parks. Parks generally have no admission fees. They are free for anyone to come and use, so they would benefit the community as a whole the most. Okay? That's why parks would be the right answer there. Very good. 19. Which of the following is true about legislative advocacy? Public employees are prohibited from lobbying members of Congress. The First Amendment protects a public employee's right to lobby. A public agency employee may lobby as a citizen of the community, but not as an employee of the agency. Or lobbying activities can be done during work hours if you are lobbying on behalf of the agency.
C.
I think somebody said C. C is correct. Okay. We went over this on the first study session. We do a lot of this with Candy when Candy's asking us to text message or to send an email. We are sending emails as TRPA members. We are not as employees of our municipalities or of our agencies. So we can lobby, but we have to lobby as a citizen of our community, not as an employee. Okay? So if that question comes up in the exam, you can lobby, but you have to lobby as a citizen, not as an employee of your agency. Okay? Hang on just 1 second. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. Number 20. Making your park and recreation agency the beneficiary of a life insurance policy is illegal since the agency isn't a person, a tax write-off even though the person is still alive, considered a planned gift, considered a post-mortem donation.
C.
C.
Considered a
C, that's right. It's a planned gift, okay? That's not post-mortem because they're not dead yet. It's not a tax write-off because even though they're alive, that doesn't make sense, and it is not illegal. So yes, planned gift is correct. Very good. 21. Which statement is false regarding a P card, which is a purchase card? This was in finance on the first session. So a P card can be designed for a specific amount so that it may only be used at that particular business. The P card monthly statement is more detailed than a credit card for accounting ease. P cards can have a rolling monthly balance, and a P card is for nonprofit, governmental, and commercial agencies.
C.
C.
Or no, it's not C.
Nope, C is right. C is correct, okay? Because it's which statement is false, all right? P cards have to be paid at the end of every month. They're not like credit. That's where they're
Credit card.
different from credit cards, okay? So P cards, purchase cards, cannot have a rolling monthly balance. So C is correct because, again, your context clue, which is false, all right? So that one is your right answer. Okay. What is the break-even cost of a program that has $500 in fixed costs, $700 in variable costs, and will have a minimum of 20 and a maximum of 25 participants? So this we did as a your break-even analysis that we went over on the first session. But what you want to do on this, you have to look at each context clue, which is $500 in fixed costs, $700 in variable costs, and then your minimum of 20 and maximum of 25, okay? When you're looking at a break-even cost, it basically says, how much do we have to charge to where we are covering all of our costs in a program? So it entails a little bit of math for this one.
D.
So the right answer, yes, the correct answer is D, because you're going to add your fixed and variable costs, which comes up to $1,200. And then you divide your minimum of 20 because you can't have the program unless you have 20 participants. So you divide that 1,200 by 20, and that comes up to $60 per participant. So your break-even cost of a program to the participant would be $60. Does anybody have questions on that? Very good. Okay, 23. When would be the least likely time to check references on a job candidate? Once again, this is one of our sequential questions. There's lots of those on this test. So just be aware of that and really focus on the sequence when you're looking through these slides. Make sure you pay attention to the sequence of events. Okay, so least likely time to check references. Prior to the initial screening, after the second screening of applicants, after the screening interview, or after the final interview.
A or D?
Correct. Whoever said A, that is correct, okay? The checking your references is going to be one of the last things you do in the hiring process. So the least likely would be before you even screen anybody, okay? You're not going to check references because that's time consuming and not important if you're going to throw them out right as, you know, after you do your initial screening. So you're not going to need to check the references. If you look at when you're screening your applicants, you look at them and go, oh, this one doesn't qualify, we're going to throw it out. Okay. So again, that's your sequential question where you're looking at, okay, what is this sequence that we're looking at? And when you're checking references, that should be on the last one. So that would probably be screening interview or final interview, not the initial screening of your applicants. Okay. So A is the correct answer. 24, which of the following is false in terms of dismissing an employee? A witness should be present at the time of dismissal. The employee should be given their last paycheck at the time of dismissal. Severance packages are required of all employees being dismissed, or a termination letter should be given to the employee at the dismissal meeting. Which of those is false?
C.
C, correct. We are not required to give a severance package. Okay, that would be up to each municipality, and very rarely does that happen. Okay. 25. A brief published summary of a position that includes how and where to apply for a job is called a job description, a job analysis, a job announcement, or a job specification. Brief published summary that includes how and where to apply.
C. Announcement.
C, very good. Yep. The big one is how and where to apply for the job. Okay, because that's not going to be it's not going to be an analysis for sure. It's not going to be part of the job description because it's where and why you need to apply. So yes, job announcement is the correct answer. All right, 26. We're halfway there, guys. The Park and Recreation professional has recently completed a training program for her soccer officials. Now the professional is concerned with the transfer of the officials' training to the workplace. Which of the following activities best promotes training transfer by the officials? Ensure the officials have an opportunity to perform the trained task in the workplace. Provide each official with a pay raise or bonus for completing the program. Enforce a negative reward system for the officials. Or implement an accountability system where officials are disciplined for not completing the training. So training transfer, what's the correct answer?
A.
A. Yep, very good. Ensure the officials have the opportunity to perform the trained task. That's the purpose of the training, is to employ the training in their task. Very good. Has nothing to do with discipline. So that's very good, correct. 27. Which of the following training methods would best address or meet a skill-based training outcome? Lectures, case studies, panel presentations, or simulations. So you're looking at skill-based training. That's your context clue.
E. Simulation.
Yes, correct. In order to demonstrate that they know what they're doing, that they can perform those skills, you do a simulation. Perfect example of that is lifeguarding class. When you're doing rescues in your training, that's a simulation of a drowning. That's how you can do a skill-based simulation for or skill-based training. And that's how you can find those outcomes, okay? That's a good thing to remember. That would be one. Lifeguard training would be a great one to remember for skill-based training, okay? 28, the park and recreation professional plans to complete a natural resource assessment for their community. Which of the following activities would be most appropriate when assessing these natural resource areas? Determine the cost recovery levels for programs within the areas. Determine a marketing plan for the areas. Determine the maintenance and operation requirements for the areas. Determine the competitors for the areas.
Maintenance and operation requirements.
C is the correct answer, okay? Because you need to look at environmental impact and facility impact, and that's where you're going to do that's where you're going to come up with your operation requirements and your maintenance requirements. It'll be for the facility itself and worrying about your protecting your natural resource, which is where your operation requirements and your maintenance will come in. Okay, very good. So C is the correct answer for 28. 29, when developing an emergency action plan, what should the park and recreation professional do first? Create an emergency operations plan, identify the potential threats, develop building park evacuation plans, and establish safe mail handling procedures. What's the first thing you do when you're going to develop these plans?
B.
B. What are possible things that can go wrong? Once you've established that, then you can do all the rest of these, okay? So identifying the potential threats is number one. Very good. 30, your supervisor has asked you to identify a financially feasible solution to an ongoing problem occurring at a park that is used during the community's annual summer celebration. In particular, your supervisor wants to more easily control and direct pedestrian traffic to key park locations while limiting traffic within dark and hazardous areas. Based on your supervisor's request, which of the following would be the most appropriate solution? That's a long question. That one I would recommend you read 2 or 3 times because it's a long one. So work with the city lighting department to establish more lighting and signage in the park. Identify another park for the annual summer celebration. Work with the park maintenance department to construct temporary fencing to direct traffic and control access to the hazardous areas, or hire additional staff to direct and supervise the traffic flow.
C.
Correct. The context clues here would be financially feasible solution, and then control and direct pedestrian traffic. Those are your key ones. That's hard because it's a really long question, but that was correct, guys. That's very good. So work with park maintenance. So you're working with an existing department, which is financially responsible. You're avoiding the hazardous areas, which is what you're wanting to do in that question. So very good. That was a tough one, but you guys got it right away. Very good. Okay, 31. When determining night lighting needs for athletic fields, which of the following factors is true? So you're looking at night lighting. More light is required for larger, slower moving objects. Higher light levels are needed for increased player skill levels. An adequate amount of spill light is needed. And athletic fields require the same amount of lighting regardless of the sport or activity or skill level.
D.
B.
So the answer, generally you'd be looking at probably A, is not right, because I mean, that's common sense. I mean, large, slower moving objects would need less light, not more light. An adequate amount of spill light is not applicable. So it's either the same amount of lighting or more lighting. And when you think about that, think about your Little League baseball and Major League Baseball. There definitely needs to be more lighting for Major League Baseball because the skill level is way higher than if you were doing a T-ball league. Okay, so the right answer is actually B. Your higher light levels are needed for increased player skill levels. Does that make sense as to why? If there's higher skill level, it needs the lighting needs to be better. Because the ball's moving faster, because people are moving faster, they need to be able to see better. So that's the answer for 31. 32. Your current definition of a capital inventory item developed in 1988 is that it is an item that costs in excess of $100, is tangible, has a useful life exceeding 1 year, and is not material reduced in value immediately by use. During the past 5 years, a larger percentage of the inventory has been missing each year. Your inventory this year indicates that you are currently missing 40% of the inventory. Which of the following strategies is the most likely solution to this problem? Redefine a capital inventory item as one costing in excess of $1,000 and redo the inventory. Declare the missing items as surplus property and eliminate them from the inventory. Have the staff redouble their efforts at locating the property until only 20% of the inventory is missing, or have security investigate and try to locate all these missing items. Which is the most reasonable solution?
A.
Yes,
A.
A is correct. Because it's something that was in 1998, 1988. It was what we said last in our operations slides. You have to look at your procedures and revisit them and make adjustments to them if needed. Because it was 1988 and your capital items are $100, that's no longer feasible. So you would want to redefine your capital item, because we know that capital items are your large, big ticket purchases. Okay, so that's where you would redefine that capital item and then redo your inventory. Okay, so yes, A is the correct answer. 33. A park and recreation professional is planning a bike ride on local trails for participants over 50 years of age. Which of the following participant characteristics will most likely impact your program planning? Income, health, gender, or
Same.
education?
He works Friday.
I don't know that day, so I'm not sure.
What do we think, guys?
I don't know.
What was the last one?
So your park and recreational professional is planning a bike ride on local trails for participants over 50 years of age. Which of the following participant characteristics will most likely impact program planning? Income level, health status, gender balance, or educational level?
Will it be
B.
It would be B, health status. So your context clue would be over 50 years of age. That doesn't, you're doing a bike ride. It doesn't matter the income level. It doesn't matter if it's gender balanced, and it doesn't matter what the education level is because you're riding a bike. So health status would be the correct answer. Okay. All right. 34. The annual Strawberry Jam Festival just finished last weekend, and a comprehensive program report is being developed. What is the first step the Parks and Recreation professional should take in developing this report? Create an outline to organize the report. Identify and develop research questions to address within the report. Select variables of interest to report, or determine appropriate research instruments to collect the data. So the first step in your comprehensive program report after your festival finished.
C.
So after your festival is finished, you'd probably do the research questions. You could do the research questions, but you wouldn't do the research questions first.
The A.
A. First, you're going to do an outline and organize the report, which would include your research questions. But yes, creating an outline is the first thing you would do. So context clue is that the jam festival finished. You're doing a comprehensive program report, and what is the first step? Your first step in any report is create an outline. Okay. 35. Partnerships that fail most likely do so for what reason? Lack of communication, no written agreement, no formal evaluation, lack of organization.
A, lack of communication.
Correct. Communication is the number one thing in partnerships. So a lack of communication is the correct answer. Very good. 36, a document that contains a list of each park area and major piece of equipment and its estimated cost minus any equipment trade-ins is an agency's schedule of capital outlays, an agency's schedule of bonded debt, an agent's schedule of payments due during the fiscal year, an agent's schedule of tax revenue projections. A, capital outlays, okay? It's your facilities, it's your pieces of equipment, it's everything you have within your department. So it's not bonded debt, it's not any payments. I mean, it's your facilities, so it's not payments and it's not tax revenue. Very good. 37, which of the following types of evaluation is conducted to improve a program while it is being implemented? Summative, strategic, formal, formative.
Formative.
Formative. It's forming during the program. Okay? So while it is being implemented is your context clue. And formative is the correct answer. Very good. 38. The Parks and Recreation Departments in 2 neighboring communities decide to run a series of holiday events together. They share authority and decision-making, which are outlined in a written agreement. The agencies formed what type of a relationship?
B.
The hard one on this is, you know, it's not a collaboration or a task force because those are not as involved. Where it says that it's outlined in a written agreement, you'd want the most responsibility, I guess, and the most oversight, and that is actually an alliance instead of a partnership. I would have thought partnership too, potentially, so that's a tough one. But the correct answer is an alliance because that one requires the most oversight, I guess, when you're creating your partner or your agreement. Okay, so alliance is the right answer there. Partnership that was a tough one though because partnership also almost could be correct. All right, 39. Your agency is planning a focus group to talk about a new facility use policy with the local school district. Who is the best choice to facilitate the focus group? The school board president, the principal, someone not affiliated with either agency, or the agency director?
C.
C.
C. C is correct. When you're doing a focus group, you want to have somebody unbiased that doesn't have a vested interest in the policies or in the program. Okay, so that would be C, someone not affiliated with either agency, because the other 3 would have a vested interest in the process the program. So they could skew the group to their favor. So that's why you'd want someone not affiliated to facilitate that group. Okay. All right, number 40, gifts, sponsorships, and planned giving are examples of what type of income? Gratuitous, earned, contractual, or compulsory?
A.
A, gratuitous, okay? That's your gifts. So gratuitous means gifts, okay? Very good. 41, by policy, a recreation agency will subsidize the direct costs of adult recreation programs by only 10%. You have a budget with the following information for an oil painting class offered in your evening lighted school program for individuals 18 years or older. Your oil painting class expenses are your instructor is $380, your facility rental is $520, your program manager is $100, and your overhead charge for your brochure is $50. So what is the maximum dollar amount the agency will subsidize the program? That's a very involved question. The main context clues are subsidize, 10%, and direct costs. So for your direct costs, okay, your direct costs are the direct expenses for that specific program. All right? Which means your direct costs are actually just going to be your instructor and the facility rental. It's not going to include the program manager who does all kinds of different programs. That's an indirect cost. And the overhead charge for your agency brochure is for the agency itself. That's also an indirect cost. So you're only looking at those first two costs. So you add those together, that gets you your $900, and 10% of your $900 is actually C, $90. So your agency is going to subsidize $90 of those costs, of that cost. Direct costs, okay? That was a pretty tough one, but that's why I kind of went through where that answer comes in, okay? So the answer is C. 42. The process of choosing an individual who has the needed qualifications to fill a job in an organization is called recruitment, selection, hiring, or job analysis.
B.
B, selection of the qualified person, okay? He has the needed qualifications to fill a job, that's selection, okay? Very good. 43, the Parks and Recreation professional can afford to develop only one marketing campaign to increase golf play. Which of the following groups should be targeted? So they can only do one marketing campaign, but they want to increase golf play. Do you target working women who indicate they have an interest in beginning to play golf, golfers who play once a month, retired men who have never played golf, or golfers who play twice per weekend?
B.
Correct. So you're looking to increase golf play. People who have never played before are not going to. People who play twice per weekend are not going to play during the week and are not going to play more than twice per weekend. So you're looking at the most likely group that is going to increase their play, and that would be golfers who play once a month. Okay? 44. A park and recreation professional is preparing work schedules and a budget for 4 part-time youth day camp staff. Staff are paid $10.25 per hour and will work 30 hours per week for 20 weeks of the year. Staff do not receive benefits. What is the appropriate amount that should be budgeted for the year? So for that question, you have to really make sure you read all of the numbers and get them right. You're looking at $10.25 per hour. The staff are working 30 hours per week. So it's $10.25 times 30 hours.
B.
And then you're looking at 20 weeks. And what you have to also remember is that it's 4 part-time youth day camp staff. So you multiply 1025 times 30, and then that number times 20, okay, which comes out to 6,150, and then multiply that times 4, because there's 4 part-time youth day camp staff. So the correct answer is D, $24,600. That's one of those questions where you have to read everything. That's one I got wrong because I forgot the 4 part-time. So that's where you really have to read the question fully. So your answer is D. Okay, 45. The first step in developing work schedules for staff should be to determine how many hours each employee works per week and what days they are available. The identification of duties and responsibilities that must be done and the staff that are able to do them. List the number of hours for each job and its relationship to the budget, or the development of a work and employee recruitment plan. So you're doing the schedules. What's the first step in doing the schedules?
A or B?
Well, that's good. You narrowed it down to 2. And it's actually needing to know the duties and the responsibilities first. Once you have the duties and responsibilities, then you determine how many hours each employee will need to work to accomplish the duties and responsibilities. Okay, again, it's a sequential question. And the correct answer is B, the identification of the duties and responsibilities that must be done and the staff that are able to do them. Okay, so that one is B. But that was a great job because you eliminated 2 of the answers and came up with 1 of the 2. That's what we need to do. Last slide of the day, folks. 46. The Park and Recreation professional supervises an aquatic center and has been in charge of the facility since it opened in 2005. Unfortunately, the facility is regularly opening each session with a deficit in the operating budget. Often, this deficit is attributed to expenses associated with mechanical failures or physical repairs needed at the start of the new season. Which of the following would be the most appropriate initial response to the issue? Another super long question that you have to really read and find where the text clues are.
But it's B.
So would it be increase the budget to account for those expenses? Develop a seasonal checklist to ensure the appropriate mechanical systems and physical amenities are being shut down during the off-season. Develop a daily checklist to ensure the appropriate mechanical systems and physical amenities are being shut down at the end of each day, or hire a consultant to identify the specific problem.
B.
Correct. Develop a seasonal checklist. So that is your context clue there would be that the deficit is attributed to expenses from mechanical failures at the start of the new season. It doesn't happen daily. It happens at the start of the new season. So that's where you develop that seasonal checklist. Okay, very good. C, which of the following best describes the values, attitudes, beliefs, personality traits, and interests of your consumers? Demographics, geoclusters, psychographics, or critical trade areas?
Psychographics?
Psychographics, that's psychology. That's your values, attitudes, beliefs, personality traits. Demographics is your age, your male or female, your ethnicity. Those are your demographics. Geoclusters are where you live, and critical trade areas are what people do for a living and how much money they make. Psychographics are your attitudes and beliefs. Psycho, you need to think of psychology. Okay, so it's your attitudes, beliefs, and personality traits. So yes, psychographics is correct. Very good. All right, 48, your public agency wants to apply for a grant to build a bike trail. The grant is only open to nonprofit organizations. What is the best way to go about applying for this grant? So it's nonprofit.
B.
B, 501c3 Friends Group is your nonprofit that Parks and Rec and municipalities need to use. Very good. Okay. Anytime you see nonprofit, look for 501c3 and Friends Groups, and that's your nonprofit. 49, complex activities with extensive rules would be best experienced by adults rather than children because of what factor? Their psychomotor abilities of the adults are more developed, the affective abilities of adults, the affective abilities of children are not as advanced, or the cognitive abilities of children are not as advanced as adults.
D.
D is correct, the cognitive abilities, because it's extensive rules that the participants need to decipher and need to understand, and cognitive is knowledge-based, and that's where knowledge of the extensive rules comes into play. Okay, so very good. Because affective is feelings, And psychomotor is also feelings. We just did that one up here, psychographics, okay? So cognitive is knowing the rules, understanding the rules. Very good. All right, last question of the test. Hotel motel taxes, rental car taxes, and sin taxes, like your alcohol and your soda or whatnot, are considered what type of tax? Personal property, real property, sales, or excise tax?
Excise.
Excise tax. Excellent. Very good. That is correct. It is excise tax. Excise tax are any of those additional taxes, not personal property, real property, or sales tax. Okay? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the practice test. Okay? It's also the end of our presentation.